All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Great to have you. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. It's been like that for close to a year now, and the plan is for it to continue to be the number one show on innovative teamwork. Also, got to shout out Pod Match again. You guys have been just apps, just an incredible service because again, I have another guest on that I met through Pod Match, and for a while, as regular listeners know, I've done a lot of solo episodes with this podcast, but it was because it's not that I don't like having guests on the show. It's just I don't like doing all the logistical shit when it comes to getting people scheduled and doing all that other stuff. So I ran into Pod Match, and it has taken the logistical work off my plate, on the administrative work off my plate, and allows me to just record and meet some incredible people, like again the one I have today. He founded a company that, to be honest with you, Mickie, I'm really personally interested in hearing how this thing got started and what it's all about, because I'm someone that still believes in writing articles. I know there's AI, I know there's all sorts of things that do things for you, but I'm someone that puts out a different article, written material every single Tuesday, and based on your services and the things that you do with you founded e-releases, and we'll get into it in a second. Based on some of the things you do, you're able to teach how to put it out in the right way, get it to the right people, get it in the right inbox, and all that. So with all that, one of the more important, that's not even the most important thing. The fact is, the most important thing about this guy is he's also from the DMV, baby, also from Maryland. So with all that being said, Mickie, I don't want to make the intro too long. Mickie Kennedy, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
All right, like I said, let's just get right into it, man. You started off, I believe it was Georgia Mason, and you were in the creative writing class or something of that nature. And then from then you started a company. Just kind of fill us in on what happened. Again, there's no time limits. Everything is organic. So
Sure.
I'll give you an open slate. Do your thing.
Sure. So I went to George Mason for graduate school. I pursued a master's of fine arts in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry. And so it was a 3-year program. And my career plan was to wait tables and write poetry after graduating. And so I did graduate and I did wait tables for a summer. And I'll be honest with you, my knees hurt, my back hurt, my mind was just frazzled. Waiting tables is hard. And anybody who's done it full time, in a busy place can tell you it's not an easy life. And I
What
was not reading, I wasn't writing. I just realized at the end of that summer, I can't do this for 30 years. I need to go find a safe office job.
do you
And
remember
so
the name of the restaurant by any chance?
it was called I think La Peeps. It was it started out as a breakfast and lunch place, and then they started serving dinner rotisserie chickens, and
Yeah.
so they would
I
have
remember,
me.
actually, yeah, because I remember, I think it was Bus Boys and Poets back when I was back in the DMV, and that place would get busy, and all the people coming in, you're on your feet a lot and making sure the orders are right. You don't want to give somebody the wrong order. Trust me, that's gonna be a bad day for you, a really bad
Yeah.
day.
And
So
when you've walked like 20 miles in a day, you start to anticipate people's needs. Do you need some ketchup with your fries? I've already got the bottle
I
ready
already
because
got
I
the
don't want
bottle.
to
All
have
right,
to go back and forth. It was
I get you.
it was rough, but it did help me with customer service skills, anticipating people's needs,
Mhm.
thinking through things. But that was about all that I got out of it, other than a
Mhm.
bad back. And so I applied for a lot of office jobs and got hired at a telecom research startup in DC called Telegeography.
Mhm.
And I was employee number 3. And they just like, hey, you have writing on your resume, write some press releases and send them out for us. And so
Wow.
uh,
Mhm.
I did that. I looked at what a press release was, and I sort of mimicked it and sent it out. Nothing happened. And so I kind of made it my mission to figure out what the media was interested in. We had access to a lot of data that nobody else had. So I felt like that should be the prize, but it wasn't. And
Mhm.
so rather than publish like the incoming and outbound telecom traffic for the US and the Caribbean countries, I would talk about one anomaly. And so I noticed that like one country had more inbound, outbound traffic to the US than all the others combined. And when I explored it, it was because that was the call center for 1-900 numbers, which were popular, a long time ago. People would pay 50 cents when they were lonely to go get their horoscope read by
Mhm.
calling a 1-900 number, or they even had dating party lines through 1-900 numbers and stuff like that. So that was it. And so I talked about that story and why the data was there. And then boom, that was the magic sauce. We got picked up by The Economist, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and 3 trade publications with that one release. And then I was
Wow.
like, ooh, I figured something out maybe. And
Mhm.
so I was like, can I replicate this? So I would look at data and notice little things. And one of the things I noticed was telecom traffic would tend to grow in a country steadily over a few years right before economic growth. And so I published that press release, resulted in a lot of articles, Investors Business Daily, and then boom, we got a new customer base. All of a sudden, hedge funds and investment firms wanted to buy our data and
Mhm.
look at our research reports because they're like, this could be a leading indicator of places we should be putting our money. And
Mhm.
so it was really exciting. I loved it. I got drunk with successes, and
Mhm.
I then noticed that as I was faxing, because that's how I was sending these releases out at the time, a
Mhm.
lot more journalists would call and say, could you email them to us in the future? And I just realized email is so much easier than programming a fax machine. So I mentioned it to my boss, and he said, hey, there could be a business there. And so I put that in the back of my mind and I thought about it. And then I just started networking with journalists in the evenings and weekends.
Mhm.
And a year later, I had a database of almost 10,000 journalists. And
Right.
I said goodbye to the startup and started e-releases. And I was just a matchmaker. I would take
Right.
people's messaging and send it to the journalists that I thought were the best fit. And there was nobody in the marketplace that was servicing small businesses for a couple $100. There
Mhm.
was the newswires, which was Business Wire and PR Newswire. They're still basically the duopoly in the U.S. Um, and uh, uh, they are $1,600 to move like a 600-word press release, and I'm
Mhm.
charging a couple $100 trying to help small businesses out. And the funny thing is that over the years, PR Newswire reached out to me and said, "We really like that you're servicing small businesses. Our salespeople have no interest in that because they're chasing the companies
Add
that
the ad though, like the
buy a
ad revenue, right?
$30,000 a year newsroom,
Exactly.
do a Asian distribution with translations that's $15,000,
Mhm.
and my guys the spend is low, and they're like, have you considered maybe we could offer you a local or city or state distribution
Mhm.
that you could add to yours? And I said no. These people are looking for national attention. They don't want a city or state, and
Mhm.
I thought that they would just go away, but they came back, and we ended up meeting. And I noticed that they had an overnight editorial team that didn't do a lot. They had to be there in case there was breaking news, a recall, a train derailment, or they needed to get something out to the Asian markets. But they really just sat idle for hours. And I said, I could take all my releases that I'm sending out now as they come in and start having people schedule them by default for next business day. You
Right.
could work on them overnight, setting them up in the wire, and it wouldn't cost you additional labor. And so they really liked that, and they liked me. And so they did give me access to a national distribution. So all of the releases that go out through e-releases get a national distribution on PR Newswire. And if you
Wow.
go directly to them,
Mhm.
it's $1,600. You go through us, it's like a third of the price. So
Wow.
it's a huge cost savings. There are caveats, like we can't work with big companies. If
Mhm.
someone comes in who would be a perfect fit for their sales guy, I move them on to my
Just
contact
so
at PR Newswire. Same
okay.
thing with publicly traded companies. And then sometimes my own clients outgrow me where they do want
The
additional
bigger.
services like
Right.
translations in Asian markets. And again, I just sort of pass them along to the Newswire. So I really try to be a good partner with them because it is a great opportunity that they're giving small businesses and entrepreneurs because ordinarily we couldn't afford to send out a national press release for $300 $500 or something like that.
So, all right, there's a quite a few things that I again personally have questions about, but as far as the listeners are concerned too, if someone is new to the term press release, how do you clearly define that to them and the importance of it? Because I think you did also mention in another video that I watched with you, that when you get the right press release or you get the right publication, it could mean, Covert's close to five-figure deals with the sales and things like that. So I think it's good to hear your clear definition of what a press release actually is.
Right. So a press release is basically just a format of an announcement that you're announcing something to the media. It's not an article. It's basically supposed to be the ingredients that a journalist could turn into an article. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's templates and samples. We have a lot on our website. They have a certain look. You'll recognize it. And I tell people don't overthink it. When you send a release through us, we're going to make sure it's in the right style and everything that's there needs to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But the real important thing is what you're announcing. And what happens is this press release goes out to journalists over the wire, and it's industry feeds. So a journalist has a login at the Newswire. Anybody
Right.
can look at the releases on PR Newswire publicly. But if you go in and you have a journalist login, you can just look at the feeds that are specific to you. You can actually even customize some of these feeds, like exclude certain releases that have certain keywords and things like that. So you
Right.
can look at a very sculpted uh, display of headlines that are very relevant to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you drill down to the ones that interest you.
Right.
And because there's basically been a duopoly forever in the US, it's two major players that account for most press releases, with one exception.
Mm-hmm.
If you're publicly traded and you don't care about journalists writing about you, and in some cases you actually don't want journalists writing about you,
Mm-hmm.
there's a third player out there called Globe Newswire that just hasn't made as much traction with journalists as these other two guys. But for publicly traded companies that are just trying to meet SEC disclosure, that's appropriate, but it doesn't have the relationships because journalists are busy and, like everybody else, a little lazy. And if you can just fish in two ponds, you don't want to encourage going to a third pond, which is
Mm-hmm.
another chore that you have to look through. So they basically train people. If you want your press releases considered, you really have to choose PR Newswire or Business Wire. They're basically very similar, and I don't think one's necessarily better than the other. But for that reason, that's the importance of newswires, of
Mm-hmm.
press releases. There are probably wires that you've heard of, like Reuters, Associated Press, AP, UPI.
Yeah.
Those are not wires of press releases. Those are wires of licensed content. And so
Mm-hmm.
when the AP sends something over the wire, AP wrote it. A reporter at the AP wrote it. And their business model is, we have great writers. We will write breaking major news and we will make it available on our wire. And that
Mm-hmm.
way, if you're the Baltimore Sun and you don't feel like writing an article that about a court case that just ended, you can just pull it off the wire and pay a licensing fee
Mm-hmm.
to the Associated Press, and you get the benefit of a really good article. And a lot of newspapers rely on this because it's just the staff is so lean that you want them to focus mostly on local news and let the big breaking news be pulled off the wire and
Mm-hmm.
incorporated into the newspapers.
So you started this in 1998, correct?
Correct.
And from that, I was in second grade, and I've seen the changes in social media and the way people get information and the whole thing. So, what are the biggest challenges that you've seen now that people just they grab one of these, they get their information, and when it comes to actually reading stuff and even business owners, they're trying to adjust on social media and trying to do all these things. What do you advise those people that, again, everyone that has to adapt to not only social media now, but now we have AI, artificial intelligence, that they could just kind of let the internet do everything?
Right. So, press releases are still working.
Mm-hmm.
The places that we get our news from is evolving. And there are still people in these news spaces that are relying on press releases. I follow a TikToker called Snackalator, and
Mm-hmm.
each week he does a roundup of new fast food foods that are coming to fast food restaurants, and he also does one for snacks hitting grocery store shelves. And all the images he says he pulls from press releases off the wire. And he's like, "Oh, I really can't wait to see this snack because I can't tell if that's glazed or if it's just the way the light's hitting it. But I really want to check it out. But these are just stills and photos from the press release." And so, it gives him an advantage because each week he's got all of the stuff before anybody knows about it and before they've actually, hit the shelves or going to start hitting the shelves later that week. And
Mm-hmm.
so it gives him a huge advantage. There, people on Instagram are relying on press releases in the fashion world. There are people who have journalist access to the wire who don't have a news outlet. They are just influencers on Instagram. And
Mm-hmm.
so I love it that the wire is so accepting and encouraging of these new social media and different outlets to use the press releases. This is completely counter to what happened 15 years ago. I saw that in the marketplace. Bloggers.
Yeah.
I had to go to PR Newswire and advocate for about half a dozen blogs and say, you need to give these blogs journalist access. They can publicly see it, the press releases on the website, but they
Right.
want that customized feed and be able to really sculpt that content. And they couldn't because they wouldn't give them journalist access. They said, "Mickie, we just don't think these are journalists." And I said, "You don't need to think they're journalists. Consumers do." And then I
Wow.
pointed out to them that this one blog in particular has more web traffic than the leading automotive trade publication,
Mm-hmm.
which was Auto News by, I think, Cranes. And when I pointed that out, they reevaluated it, and then they slowly started vetting these people and letting them on. And I just like they're just holding on to old media so tight.
Yeah.
But now it's refreshing to see that they're so welcoming of people who want to use the content and many different ways, people on YouTube, other things like that.
Right.
I do think that most of this stuff is being turned into video or will
Yeah.
continue to rise the number of people that are turning this into video. And I think that that's what we naturally like to consume. So
Yeah.
one of the things that you have to think about as you do a press release is, what are the elements that I could do in a press release that might make it better for video? One is your photos. What kind of photos you include. The Snackolator guy loves these close-up images of the snack,
Mhm.
not just the box, but also the actual food stuff, the product. How does that look? And, can you make it captivating or interesting? And
Mhm.
the next thing is video. You can include embedded YouTube videos in press releases. I don't see media using it very much. And when
Mhm.
I've talked to a few media outlets, they said it's a legality thing. And it's like, what do you mean? And they're just like, well, if we take some of that footage and use it and incorporate it, is it our copyright? Because everything that they write as an article is theirs, and they feel very comfortable with that, and they
Right.
protect that. But with
Exactly. Yeah.
video, they're a little hesitant. Have I used too much? Is it transformative? And they're just like, some of them just don't know. And I think that they just need to get over it.
Mhm.
We are in a take,
It's a free for all.
use,
It's a free
grab
for
and
all.
use
Yeah.
economy. They need to just run with it, and I'm pretty sure that they will, and we're going to see more of them using it in the near future. But I think that another thing that you can incorporate in your press release is a story. Anytime
Yeah.
you have people telling a story, they like a story arc.
Yeah.
And so, what are the elements that you could add to a press release that would lend itself more to a story arc? A product launch press release. I get these every day. Here's the product. Here's a list of features. Sometimes there are even bullets. And then here's a link to learn more and buy it. That
Right.
is not a story. But if you talk about a use case study that says, hey, here's someone, this was what they were suffering with. They used the product. Here's this great outcome with a number, and now
Yes.
you have a
Mhm.
quote by them. You can
Yes.
build a story, and
Mhm.
that's good for video. So
Mhm.
take these things into account. It'll actually even make it better for print because journalists in print like a story arc, and it's hard for anybody in any type of reporting or storytelling to basically work with such little stuff. You really have to give the elements of a story arc. I tell people, go through a press release, and one of the things to do is, are there places where you could inject numbers and data?
Hmm.
For example, you might have a logistics software solution that you feel is very important and solves yeah, a big problem in trucking where people can't get their cost in line and understand their cost. And so your solution solves that.
Hmm.
Well, what if you put a number in there like 67% of new trucking companies fail in their first 5 years, often
Yes.
because they can't
Hmm.
get their cost under
Yes.
control. And
Hmm.
our product solves this.
Yeah.
And then you put the stakes in there of why this solution is important. And a journalist looking at that will say, whoa, my audience of people who are in the trucking industry
Hmm.
might be really captivated at that, because that's a shocking number that
Yeah.
more than 2/3 of people fail because they can't get their cost under control, which seems like a no-brainer, but having that data point and then introducing your solution just shows the importance of your solution.
Yes, and I literally just we're recording this on a Wednesday, but I put out an article every Tuesday, and yesterday the title for my article was "Don't Start More Businesses, Fix More Problems." And with everything that you're talking about, it still boils down to it. Again, for you listeners, it still boils down to what issue and what problem are you fixing, and then get deeper and deeper into that problem. Be the solution, give stories, gives facts, gives percentages, do whatever it is you need to do to solve that issue, hit that pain point. All right. And so throughout this entire conversation, you've mentioned journalists quite a bit. And it makes me think, because I'm a sports guy and I consume a lot of sports. And what I've seen over time is, it's gotten away from actual real journalism and it's gotten into more opinionated stuff. Do you see that affecting your business in any way when it comes to vetting out real journalists and finding people that are really going to report the news, or people that just give their opinion and then take what's said and then they run with it and everyone believes this thing because this one had this opinion, and then it can turn into like a news, like what news am I getting that's fake and what news am I getting that's real, or is it somebody else's opinion? How does stuff like that affect you?
Um, a little bit, but not as much as you would think. I think that even if you look back 30 years when you felt like it was the golden era of journalism,
Yeah.
there's somebody deciding what got picked
Uh-huh.
and deciding what gets talked about.
Right.
And even though the breakdown seems very even and fair, there were people that weren't considered. And, small businesses, mom and pops,
Well, these are the
there's
people that you're serving now too, though.
correct,
Right.
correct. So I think that you always just sort of have to realize there are biases, and it's
Yeah.
going to evolve, and there are going to be biases. We are in a very uh, influencer forward area where we
Mhm.
are wanting to get people's opinions and perspectives and stuff like that. But I also think there's still room for more objective stuff, and like product reviews. And even with product reviews, someone's experience is an opinion, and when they
Mhm.
encounter glitches using a product or something like that, that's their opinion and experience, and
Mhm.
maybe it wouldn't have happened with someone else. So I think it is I don't think we can all ever report in the way that like Consumer Reports strives to report, where it's
Mhm.
all objective and they try to make a metric around everything, and every element is just lab conditioned so that the bias is as minimal as possible.
Right.
But I do think that we are in a polarized arena.
Mhm.
There are people who will, just jump off of a social media platform because of who owns it, and so uh, there are that is just part of what we're doing. And there's also politics and things like that, and I'm just very fortunate that you know that space isn't an area that I focus a lot of PR energy or
Mhm.
have a lot of customers in. I've had people before tell me, oh, you should really go into that space, and I'm like, don't think I'd enjoy it, because
Mhm.
when I have a client
Yeah.
who gets a big pickup and all of a sudden says, I got like $150,000 in orders over the last couple of months that are all
Wow.
because of that.
Right.
That excites me. And if a politician tells me I helped them get elected and find out later they're just like every other politician, I'm not going to feel very well about that.
Right, right.
So I really do like servicing small businesses. And, when it comes to outcomes, it's all over the place.
Mhm.
That's why marketers hate PR. PR
That
is
was actually just be, I mean,
unpredictable.
you just be, that was going to actually be the next question I had for you. You get marketers and now you get PR. Talk to me a little bit about that relationship because that's what social media has created. Everyone calls himself a marketer now. Everyone calls himself an entrepreneur. Everyone's trying to market this, market that. So talk to us a little bit about the compare and contrast with that.
Right. So when it comes to marketing, there's a tracking URL. You could easily measure ROI. You could put a tracking URL in a press release, but I guarantee you, if they do publish your website, there will be no tracking URL on it. And then there's instances like the Wall Street
Wow.
Journal.
Okay. Well, I got to pause you there. I just hit me tracking URL. So that means whoever visits your site, you can actually see it and you can track these people as opposed to people coming to your site and now I don't know a way to get in contact with them and all that. Correct? Just so
Correct.
so
So
we're on the
like you,
same
you
page.
can
All
you can you
right.
can usually embed a little bit that follows after your URL that's got usually, I don't know, like an ampersand and a bunch of little squirrely characters. And somehow that's a tracking mechanism. And journalists will just chop it off. And in some instances, they don't include links either. New York Times says that they don't include links. Wall Street Journal says they don't include links. I have gotten the New York Times to link to someone, even though they say they don't,
Mhm.
just because I created such a powerful research page for a survey that a client did. And it was so valuable that the New York Times broke their own rule. And in the online article, they included the URL. They didn't in the print, and I can understand why in the print edition, but on their online edition, they did link to it and break their own rule.
Way
That
to
being
go,
said,
Mickey.
better, that being said, you do get an SEO benefit as if there was a link when New York Times writes about you, because
Uh-huh.
Google has a patent on what they call an implied link, that they can contextually tell when their robot visits that page, that
Mhm.
that page is about you. New York Times is a huge authority, and you get link credit even though there's no link there. And all my clients will tell you that the best SEO they've ever had, there was no links involved. It was them getting an article in the New York Times. It was them, getting a mention in the Wall Street Journal.
Mhm.
It's a really strange place. And also when it comes to ROI of press releases, how do you measure it? And I always tell my clients,
Mhm.
are you doing predictable marketing? You kind of have an idea of how much revenue you get in a month. If you
Right.
do a press release and you see articles that result from that, then if you get a bump in revenue, it's easier to attribute that to your PR effort.
Right.
If
'Cause you know specifically where it's coming from, and that ROI. It's anybody could just put up a website, but when you get in specific to your target, and there's like a actual specific person you're reaching out to, now you know why you're getting this traffic. It's almost like with this pod match thing, right? I looked on my back office and I realized my listens have gone up like a couple thousand, like a couple hundred more people just in the week that I joined Podmatch. And I know specifically why. It's because I wasn't doing so many solo episodes. Now you have people on Podmatch looking at your stuff and listening to your episodes, things of that nature. So it's a very similar thing we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do want to be very respectful of your time. I definitely appreciate you coming on. But before I let you go, I want you to kind of walk us through who would be like an ideal client for you, just in case they're listening right now.
Right. I think that an ideal client is someone who's doing something unique.
Mhm.
If you've heard of a unique selling proposition, you have one. Startups always work well with us because they usually know what their USP is, and they have an elevator pitch where they can very succinctly tell you what they do that's different than everybody else in the marketplace.
Right.
Other people that do well are people who are just open to trying new things and open to learning. And I have a free masterclass at ereleases.com/plan, and I do 10,000 to 12,000 releases a year. I see the ones that work and I see patterns. And so I created that masterclass. It's less than an hour long video
Mhm.
that goes through about 8 of the types of releases that I see work again and again. So if you built a PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases based off of a brainstorm of these ideas as they apply to your business, and you did that, I guarantee you'd see at least 2 or 3 of those releases get earned media articles about you. The sad truth is that not every press release is going to get earned media, but if you stick to ones that are strategic, you're much more likely to do so. That being said, one of the press releases I talk about in that masterclass never fails. It always works and always gets earned media. The
Mhm.
average is 8 to 14 articles from one press release. The sad thing is, it takes a little bit of work because you're going to be doing a survey within your industry, and that's a little involved, but it's basically coming up with 16 questions that are timely and relevant today.
Mhm.
4 questions per page in SurveyMonkey. Take that link, go to a independent or a small trade association in your industry, and they're out there. You don't know them, but there's hundreds in every industry. Find one that aligns with your audience or who you are
Mhm.
as a company, and ask if they'll send that link to their members. In exchange, you will mention their organization in your press release that you'll be issuing over the wire. You can say over PR Newswire, and this works about 2/3 of the time because these smaller and independent trade associations get no media attention, and they will see this as a win-win for them. The large trade associations aren't interested. They get all the media attention. They don't need you. They're not going to work with you. But these small guys will. Have them send it out. We're trying to get 100 or more responses. If it doesn't, ask if they can push it on social media to kind of get the numbers up. And
Mhm.
then when you've got that, look at the 16 questions that you asked and what's surprising. What's the most surprising thing here based on what people responded? And pick 1 or 2 of those things to focus a press release on.
Mhm.
Build out a page on your website with all 16 questions and answers there, and all the data and analysis, because that's a resource page. That's what I got New York Times to link to that one time.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I remember. Yeah.
so build that out, and then do a press release, put a quote in there of why you felt the numbers on that one question turned out that way. And
Mhm.
now you're a thought leader, you're an expert, you
Yes.
just released some great data, and people in your industry will want to know what that data is.
Mhm.
And when you send that out, the average is 8 to 14 articles in your industry from one press release. And
That's
that's
amazing.
just one of the ones that I go through in that free masterclass. And it's a great place to start. If you've never done PR, start there. It's an hour commitment, and I guarantee you'll walk away probably knowing more strategic ideas for press releases than many people who work in PR firms and public relations.
Right. And now what is the best way for people to get in touch with you? Or can you say the website again? Or
Sure. So the free masterclass is at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. My website's ereleases.com. All
Mhm.
my social media is on the lower right. Also, feel free to chat, email, or call the numbers on the website. You'll only speak to editors. We have no salespeople. There's no
Yeah.
sales commissions. We provide we're a resource for free. If you have a release you just want us to take a look at, you can send it to us. We'll get it back to you in a business day or 2
Mhm.
business days at the most. And there's no charge for that. And you don't have to use us. We're just open. We're a resource to help small businesses. We believe in PR, and we want to get people to try PR and try strategic PR
Yeah.
and build these campaigns that will succeed.
Yes, yeah. That I mean, I cannot tell you as listeners, I cannot tell you the importance of everything he just said because of all of the distractions that we have out there. You've got to lock in on your target, lock in on that target, and just go after it every single day with your content over and over and over again. And you're not going to get there without coaching. You're not going to get there without editors. You're not going to get there without people keeping you from getting sideswiped with all the craziness going on in this world. So with that, Mickie, the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination for a little bit. You are a patriot, George Mason patriot, proud and proud. You're getting ready to go work at this bar, and you're tired of it. You don't know what's coming next. You have this ability to be creative and all that. I want you to pretend that that young man has come into this Zoom room and just give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
So to that person, I would say measure everything, trust your gut, but measure it and take chances and go buy as much Apple stock as you can.
That is a great one. That's an awesome one, man. All right, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.